Welcome to A World Gone Mad. I am your host, Christian McMillan, and I hope you enjoy the scheduled programming. Welcome back, Trevor. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Can't
Excellent.
complain.
Excellent.
Chaotic day.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. What's new with you?
Oh, man, not too much. Kind of midway through that comedy course that we talked about. I'm not sure if we did it last time or if we talked about it even, but you and I have talked about it. So I'm midway through that.
Cool.
Pleasantly surprised. It's actually, quite nice. It's more focused on the writing, obviously, and then you get to stand up and do your shit, which, I've got a back pile of writing that I have wanted to try out in front of people in a setting that is actually stand-up conducive, and I'm finally able to do that. So
really, you find yourself getting your hands dirty a lot more?
Yeah. Like I have roughly about 10 minutes of material that I think is worth getting out there, and then I have another few pages of shit that maybe somebody might find funny, but I don't know. So that'll be kind of just throw those in here and there, but for the most part, I got a lot of stuff that I've been working on, and I can't wait to get it out.
That's badass, dude. I'm glad to hear.
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that. But other than that, just working on getting healthy and staying healthy and getting back to work. So
Fuck yeah.
How about you? Anything new with you?
I saw the new Batman yesterday.
Oh yeah, how was that?
I really liked it. I thought it was great. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, it is a different take, as well as it's less of a traditional superhero movie, or perhaps Batman's more of an anti-hero, but regardless of that, it's almost like a psychological thriller.
Ah, okay, cool.
The Riddler, the pursuit of him almost reminds me of the movie Seven or something like that.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went and saw Uncharted and saw the trailer for the new Batman.
Nice.
And how would you say Peterson did?
Great.
Yeah.
I really liked it, actually.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, I mean, Christian Bale has always been my Batman. So
right.
I don't know. Like I had my doubts, but I'm glad he came through.
I saw there was a lot of discussion around the fact that he didn't get extremely jacked to be Batman.
Yeah.
But his physique was good. It was a realistic goal, I think, for a person who's not gonna do steroids and what typical superhero roles lead actors to do.
Right.
Because I think Hollywood is one of the worst places for people building unreasonable goals of what you can achieve naturally in terms of exercise.
Oh, absolutely.
So many of those guys just deny their use of steroids.
Yeah.
And then you have people like Zac Efron coming forward saying that he never wants to be in the shape he was in for Baywatch or something again.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just so much work, and you have to revolve your whole life around it, and you have to not eat food.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The calorie deficit alone would kill you. Like just, yeah.
Oh, and it's worse if you do try to do that without performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah. Oh,
Getting
absolutely.
super shredded naturally is pretty hard on your hormone profile, from my understanding. But his acting was really good, I thought. Awesome. It is a different, moodier take on Batman. He was not a playboy philanthropist.
Okay.
I'm trying to not spoil it while I discuss it, but I would highly recommend it. It's different, but the unique approach to Batman, I thought, was
right on.
It was successful.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. When you remake the same shows over and over and over again, you got to get a little creative, I guess, right? Otherwise, you can't just have Christian Bale over and over again, just in different, who was the last Batman? Or Ben Affleck as well. Like there's that's something different. They went with the middle-aged Batman. That
I didn't see one of those, and I tried to watch one of the Justice League movies, and my attention fizzled out really early into it.
Yeah.
I feel like DC does not have their the movie franchise down at all.
Yeah.
It's really hit and miss.
Not compared to Marvel. We're spoiled with that.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. I was thinking, as we've been through the music course and stuff, how you want to make something similar but different, right? Same, but different. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the whole purpose of it is you want it to be pleasantly familiar, but a little bit, unique in its own way. And I just can't help but, see these movies like Uncharted and, how it's just cookie cutter movies where it's like this action happens. Oh, now it's just so regimented in how they write the movies. I'm not saying it wasn't a good movie. I enjoyed it. It had lots of action, and it just a lot of very predictable twists and turns. And it's really just to get Tom Holland out there and to build his brand, right? And I just see that with all the movies is really, to sell whatever ad space they can and to build a brand of a single movie icon so they can just throw him and he's the new draw, right? So Tom Holland is the new guy and
he's it right now for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan. I think he's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too. He's wonderful. He's charming, he's good looking, and he's funny. So absolutely, why wouldn't you like the guy? But I don't like how commercialized it is, but at the same time, you got to respect it. The fact that they just have a formula and they keep pumping it out and we keep falling for it. It's on us at that point.
Yeah, I also think that goes way beyond movies in terms of things like the hero's journey. If you were to pick it apart as an archetype, we've been pushing that story since the days of the Bible.
Yeah.
Back in the day when people had one book that they were told what it said and no one was allowed to read it.
Yeah, exactly.
We've been telling very similar stories for a long time.
Yeah. Well, everybody loves a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Bible's got some good stories.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
If nothing else.
Yeah, I find all religious texts to really have some interesting stuff in them.
Yeah. I've always dabbled in like the mystical things and whatnot, but I've been hearing a little bit more about, I don't even know if I should try and put a label on it, but it's like just the South Indian, or I don't even know, some sort of Indian culture with like the different gurus and stuff, and which is funny because it seems like whatever I listen to is, I don't know if it's programming me or if I'm programming it, but then I've been watching these things on YouTube for a while, and then all of a sudden Joe Rogan has that Sadhguru on or whatever. Yeah,
I saw that. I didn't watch the episode, but I noticed he had this guru on.
Yeah.
I don't know who the figure is at all.
Well, yeah, last time we talked, I don't really know him either. I've seen him on a couple YouTube, homepages or whatever, but I kind of stick to more of the explanations about it as opposed to the practice of it, and because it's very interesting to me, and to hear just the way they tell tales, right? And what kind of got me onto that was the Native American, and the storytelling through that. And I've been really into storytelling lately, so I've been trying to find the best storytellers and the formula to that almost, and kind of led me down some of the Buddhist and then different Indian culture, just the stories and narratives that they hand down from generation to generation. And yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, Joe Rogan steals my thunder and has somebody on. But yeah.
Neat. Yeah, because Buddhism is traditionally from India, from my understanding.
Yeah.
Which I know Hinduism is the dominant religion there presently, I believe, but I do not understand necessarily where there's a group of people called the Upanishads.
Okay.
And they were from India, I believe. And the last version of the Tao Te Ching, I read, one of the Lao Tzu's book on Taoist practice, made correlations between the Sanskrit text of the Upanishads and as well as the Bible all throughout the Taoist text, which I thought was really neat. But that's the only time I've ever heard of this group of people, which I believe it's perhaps more of an ancient mythology in context of the region.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, no, I've never heard that before, but that sounds cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize until recently that gypsies actually come from India and they had migrated north into Europe, because I've always heard of them in context of Russian history and stuff
Yeah,
like that,
Romani.
Eastern Europe. Yeah. And when I was looking into where gypsies come from, it's India.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is pretty busy there, so I can see why people would want to leave. But that's cool. I'm, yeah, you got to wonder how far we actually walked before, either the Ice Age or whatever, before it went during Pangea, if we were actually a thing, or I don't know. I don't know that much about history, but the fact that life began in Africa and there's people literally everywhere, and a lot of them walked there. Like, that's pretty hard to believe, and they changed color along the way.
Yeah, not to mention the balls of the people who got on boats.
Yeah, exactly. Just, all right, we could fall off the edge of the world. We could. That could be our thing, but let's just chips ahoy, right? So yeah, you got to wonder what the modern day equivalent of that would be, like, to be a trendsetter or a world explorer.
I think it's almost bound to only be technological at this point.
Yeah.
Because there's or it's space, right?
Yeah.
There's some unexplored regions of perhaps the oceans and things like that. But otherwise, I think it's Elon wanting to go into space and even make the technological progressions of putting microchips in our fucking brains.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I know. I've mixed feelings about that too. But I'd like for it to be a consciousness evolution or something like that next, and that would be the next great frontier, is to be able to understand our own minds. That would be, I wish we would do that instead of going to space sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
Being able to like understand what dreams are, and
or even where consciousness is actually coming from, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where I do find you have a little wiggle room for the religious to talk to materialist,
right?
Because we don't know between our nervous systems and synapses what happens in between that becoming consciousness.
Right.
Where it's a very...
Yeah.
And that, I think, invites room for religious discussion.
Oh, yeah.
I heard a quote recently from Majid Nawaz. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but where the heart goes, the mind will follow.
Right.
And he bases that somewhat on this disconnect of consciousness and our biology.
Yeah. Yeah, I often think about that, because like so much of our emotions are created in our stomach, right? And like life begins in the gut as well. And you can change your gut biome, you can change your emotions, your moods, and you can heal yourself through what you eat and what you drink, and yet you can live without a stomach or, whatever. And you can live temporarily without a heart if something's artificially keeping you alive. But you can't get past the brain. But at the same time, like, you only know perspective through your eyes, right? So it's not like you see with your brain. So really, there's so many different parts of us that make up the whole that... I don't know where this is going, other than the fact that I'm just so amazed by, and I often do think, like, where are my thoughts coming from? Because logically it's the brain, right? But it's controlled by your stomach. You need your heart to beat. You need your oxygen from your lungs. And what if we found out that consciousness really did come from, like, your fucking nutsack or something, right?
Yeah, I find even people who are heavily into mindfulness and meditative practices, they do encourage this focus on your senses beyond necessarily imagining your consciousness is within your head. There's even a particular meditation practitioner who encourages... He calls it the headless way, I believe. And you're almost making an effort to eliminate the sensation of having a head while you're meditating.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah, it's even a thing in some of my guided meditations. I will be encouraged to even figure out if I feel like my conscious perception is existing in my head or somewhere else.
Wow. That's pretty deep.
Yeah, it's all through that Waking Up app that Sam Harris has made. It's an incredible app. It has so many different people offering so many different tools of meditation that it really revolutionized my ability to meditate.
Really?
Yeah, particularly because once you have a bunch of people giving you a bunch of different ways to get to a meditative state of mind, all of a sudden when you sit down, you're not getting all tense and trying to focus on one method or two methods. All of a sudden you have an arrangement of tools.
Yeah.
And you can sit down, close your eyes or leave them open, and all of a sudden just go to the tools you have available that feel best for you in that moment. Because there's so many different methods to get into that state of mind.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, personally, my mom kind of got me into meditation early on for hockey and for sports and stuff. And I did, lots of different newsletters that she signed up for that send free meditations and stuff over the years. But what I've found works best is to just like piece by piece relax my body, like start at my toes and then just focus on my toes for a few minutes and wait until kind of my whole foot starts to kind of get warm and numb, and then it kind of climbs up my body and I can almost visualize it coming up my body until my entire body, it feels like I'm like in sleep paralysis. And I can stay there usually for a little while, and then that's the most restorative meditation practice that I have, because then I can really feel my body kind of release. But as far as achieving nirvana or anything like that, I've never really quieted the mind all the way.
Right.
Yeah. Other than with mushrooms.
Yeah, I do even think that those things are elusive in essence when you have a goal of meditation. I don't think trying to achieve something like nirvana can be a counterintuitive goal in itself.
Yeah.
Where you're so focused on what you think enlightenment might be that I don't think people who are in that state of mind would notice if they missed it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's like, trying to see in the dark, right? You can't look at what you're looking for. You have to look away and then use your peripheral vision, right? And that's something that I really felt with DMT. And,
I was actually thinking today, I was wondering if you've ever used DMT.
I have, yeah. I've done it once. Well, I guess twice in one day, but I did it the first time, got some pretty good trippy effects, and I didn't meet the aliens. And then the second time I definitely did. And the whole purpose of the trip was that, for one, it was to be nicer to women and to the women in my life, and immediately got up and called my girlfriend, and actually I told my buddy, because we sat for each other, we each did it, and I told him, like, I just got to call her. I'll be right back. And but the most important part for me was just the fact that with a little voice in my head kept saying, this is available all the time. Like, you can come back here anytime you want. You don't need drugs. You don't need anything. Like, you can just have this feeling. Remember this feeling. And I remember for the next 3 weeks after I did it, I had that feeling at my fingertips, right? I could control it. And that was probably the best 3 weeks of my life.
I totally understand that in context of when you hear people who are heavily into meditation talk about psychedelics, they say they're very fascinating and I enjoy them, but I feel like I achieve more interesting states of mind through meditation.
Yeah.
And I do often find myself even getting some very difficult to describe effects from meditation that do feel psychedelic and introspective in a way that I don't achieve often enough in my waking life.
Yeah. Oh, I'd agree with that too. I'd say that I'm never more relaxed. Like there's no way I could, relax and kind of at all achieve what I could with psychedelics. It's completely different. It's very similar in the sense that, the mind is not what it normally is, but at the same time, it's like apples and oranges. The trip versus meditation, like it's way more enjoyable to do it by yourself. When it's, done by the drug, you don't have that sense of control, and you can't just wake up out of it, right? And
I think that's also part of the practice of psychedelic ritual, though, and the biggest benefit. I even find that with marijuana, one of the reasons I smoke pot is sometimes that it scares me, that I get anxious about the things I do, the things I say. All of a sudden, I'm way more self-conscious.
Yeah.
And it can be momentarily a hindrance.
Yeah.
But overall, I think sometimes that moment of contemplation does cause me to be a kinder person.
Okay, yeah.
Think twice before I speak, or even just word things in a bit kinder of a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I know weed for me, like, it changes my consciousness, my personality, but not to the extent it used to, especially since I've started the SSRIs. I noticed that, like, I don't recede into myself the way I used to. Now I'm able to be more myself still, and even as high as I want to get, I can still function, whereas before I wouldn't be able to do that. And I think I don't know if that's just because of the pills or what, but in the last little while, the more I've smoked pot, the more it's become like what you say. For me, it's a tool to get to where I need to go, right? And I can get there without the weed, but it's like, walking somewhere instead of taking a car, right? And I don't feel like I'm cheating so much as I used to anyway. When you try and get somewhere, a natural relaxation from meditation, and I would smoke, and I'd be like, well, this isn't fair.
Well, that's what I found. I think, they call it entheogenics, when people are trying to get closer to spiritual effects through drugs.
Okay.
And I knew some people who were obsessively interested in thinking that marijuana made them more spiritual and things like that. And when I looked into it, there's actually some counterintuitive information on that fact, in which marijuana will do things like overall raise your cortisol, your stress hormone.
Yeah.
So it can actually make it more difficult to do something like get in a meditative state of mind.
Yeah. I can see that. That's definitely the way it used to be for me. I'd get much more panicked, and it would just be stone thoughts, and I'd forget what I had thought for the last hour. So I thought I was relaxed, but and I noticed with alcohol in the last probably 5 years that it really pushed me away from, like, the source, if for lack of a better term, my kind of God or source energy, whatever that is. I felt that I could only be close to that when I was pure of substances. But, now that I've gotten on the SSRIs, I like, okay, well, that really helped get a piece of my brain out of the way that I needed to get there. So it's not about being pure for me, right? And once I allowed that to happen, then the weed also, it helped me kind of get closer to that dharma or whatever. But alcohol always pushes me further away. And, it makes me a bit more of a bubbly person, but at a very high cost.
Yeah, that's something I found in Islam, actually, right? They have a big discouragement from alcohol.
Right.
And they believe that I think it's where they think the term spirit comes from, is that it actually is taking away from your spirit, that you're expending it.
Interesting.
And in too large of a burst for it to be something you can have longevity with.
Yeah.
And I do think the word alcohol is where we get the word alcohol, and it has Arabic origin.
Wow. Okay.
But I do think Muslim views on alcohol have a great deal of powerful truths to them.
Right.
In which they do takes away from your life. It takes away from your connection to the spiritual, I think.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I definitely agree with that. Weed, I mean, I wouldn't disagree if somebody said the exact same thing about weed, but to me, it feels like, if you, to explain it in vibrations, my vibration, my pure vibration, and then a weed, interrupts that vibration, and you want to try and match your pure vibration to the pure vibration of the universe, right? And if you keep it's like a spinning top. If you keep hitting it with alcohol, the top's going to get out of vibration, it's going to get out of sync, and you're not going to,
That's what I find more than anything. It is the volume of use and how the use particularly agrees with you. Because I know some people can drink and they do it in a great way.
Yeah.
Where they do have a drink or two on occasion and they never have an issue with it.
Yeah.
And then I know a great deal of people who that's fucking possible for them to do.
Yeah.
But a lyric was coming to mind, and it is a lyric that stuck with me for a long time. There's a song by Propagandhi. It's called Back to the Motor League, but there's a line in it that he says, "Wieners drunk on straight edge." And I used to find that to achieve meditative states of mind, I used to feel like I had to be extremely sober, and it was the only way I ever felt in alignment. But I often returned to some substance use for the reason that I did find that sobriety became something that I was chasing much like a drug, and did start to have, it had a different effect on my thoughts and personality, not necessarily for the best.
Right. Sobriety, that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be something that I think people get intoxicated on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Particularly those that you will see some people who are sober have such hoity judgment of others. They're so condescending about it. Even they religiously go to AA and kind of do it more for the social symbol that they make efforts to not drink, rather than actually doing it for their own spiritual or social benefit.
Right. Yeah. That makes total sense. And I personally, I like the crutch of marijuana, so I haven't had like a pure sober, month in probably well over a year. So I can't say that I'm chasing sobriety, but I would definitely say that I know people who are so addicted to being sober, like you say, that that totally makes sense to me.
Well, I think anything that forces you to be rigid in your behavior, your beliefs, your states of mind, that takes away from your spirituality and your connection to the bigger picture and nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, caught up in your own bullshit.
Mm-hmm. And it's really easy to do that, and people even do it with all sorts of things, right? Their spiritual views, their religious views, their substance of choice, or their antithesis of all those other things I mentioned, right? These people who will be nihilistic, they say they have no belief in any institutions, but clearly you have, you're revolving your life around this belief system that you're dictating invalidates all the others.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, trying to find your consciousness as well, where you keep thinking like, oh, okay, no, I know my thoughts, like I know what I'm thinking, and I know this voice in my head isn't, like, I can achieve higher consciousness, but then you achieve that higher consciousness only for a moment, and then all of a sudden you slip back into that rut again, and every time you think you're catching up to your ego or whatever, you're one step behind, right? And I had a really good point there that I was working towards, but
I agree though. There's so many people who describe themselves as extremely spiritual, and they use the word ego so frequently. People who use the word ego too much often are a red flag to me, because often they're egotistical and they've just decorated their ego with spirituality.
Absolutely. That was my ex-girlfriend did exactly that.
It's hypocrisy is something that does bother me in people when it's the pinnacle of their personality is hypocritical.
Absolutely. It's like the loudest one in the bar is never the toughest. It's always the quietest one, right?
For sure.
If you have and you have, you don't need to tell, right? And people will tell you. So, and that's like being a yogi or a guru or a Buddha or whatever is just about being quietly confident and being aware that you and humble and that's something. Humility is something that so many people lack, and myself obviously included. But I try so hard not to be a hypocrite when it comes to things. And when I find out that I am being a hypocrite, I try and change my views, or at least scold myself for holding those views and become aware of it. Right. And
for sure,
I think that's all you can do. And you just work to change your views. And, maybe you with your they, them, theirs, maybe you will come around on those.
My they, thems, theirs.
Yeah.
That I don't dive into neo-pronoun use very effectively or, I'm not especially conducive with it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I don't think that I refuse to use them. I just think that it's a bit of verbal gymnastics, and there is a line I'll draw where I won't use them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're telling me that you switch them throughout the day, and I better keep an eye on your bracelet and what color it is, I'm gonna just say no, thank you, and probably not spend time with you.
Yeah.
But if it's they, them, I'll do my best.
Yeah.
But it's not a thing that is done regularly in my life, so I'm gonna fail.
Yeah, absolutely.
X amount of the time.
And as long as you're humble about that.
Yeah.
Check your privilege.
Yeah. Did you on the topic of the neo pronouns and whatnot? How about the NCAA? Did you see the swimming competition that has just taken place that is flooding Twitter?
I think with you said
everyone's opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw a pretty funny video where I think it's a mother of one of the athletes is talking to an employee and saying, "That's a man." And this guy responds, "Are you a biologist?" And the woman goes, "I'm not a vet, but I know what a fucking dog is." She's like, are stupid arguments the only one you have? Like, are these the only resources you have in this conversation?
Wow.
I thought it was very funny.
Good for her. That's pretty impressive. And I feel bad for that person in that situation. However, I'm sure that the thought did cross their mind that, hey, I'm going to be the best at this. Like, I am shit in my division, but if I go ahead and start picking on the little guy, like, I'm going to kick some ass, right? So you can't feel totally sorry because now I don't know how far along they are in their transition, but I can grow long hair and kick some ass at female hockey too. Like,
fuck yeah.
I don't know, like maybe if I think to compete in female sports, you got to lop it off. Like you have to be at least that far. You can't
I think you still have advantages, right? There's a guy, Derek from moreplatesmoredates.com. He has multiple videos going into these things multiple times and just pointing out that just because you take a pill of estrogen once a day does not mean that you don't have physical advantages in this competition.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even with the HRT, it's really easy to wiggle around it because anybody who knows anything about steroids and athletics in the first place, there's a fuck ton of wiggle room in all professional sports. People go, steroids are cheating. Do you know how loose the parameters are for something like football or basketball?
Oh, yeah.
Even the UFC, there's so many little wiggle rooms around all of that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I just think they should legalize it all. Give everybody the same options, right? As far as, those performance enhancement. Like, we're here for enhanced performance. These are the most enhanced people in their fields, right? They're the best. Why not give them every ability to be the best and to see what we can achieve with that, right?
I really do think tons of them are doing it anyways, and we just kind of
exactly. But then you get these poor women who, maybe in this case right here, who are trying to do it the natural way and are competing against the other women that their body types are the same, their physiology is the same, and there's just absolutely no way that person beat the other women by like 2 laps or like a full length of the pool there and
Really?
back. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Like,
okay, I thought it was by a very small amount, because what fascinates me often with this sports conflict and on the subject of transgenderism is very often they weren't very good athletes to begin with,
exactly.
right? Like the Fallon Fox situation, or even there was recently another ex-military, large jack dude changed to a woman and wanted to enter a UFC fight, or not a UFC fight, pardon me, an MMA fight, I meant. But at least this had transparency in it. Where the Fallon Fox thing, that she covered it as an personal medical procedure so it didn't have to be disclosed to the biological women, is absurd. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're a person looking to do something like that, you're a psychopath.
Yeah.
When you see videos, sometimes it's the interviews has really shaped how I feel about the sports controversy on the subject. When there are those videos of, biological males talking shit about all the other women being losers in sore sports and stuff like that. I'm like, you are a man who hates women.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're taking it out on them.
Yeah.
I see misogyny written all over it.
Yeah. Wow, you fucking turf.
Well, whatever.
Yeah, no, but that's totally true. Like, and
I'm willing to take the stance.
Yeah. Like the fact that there's no humility. Once again, we circle back to humility. There's no humility.
It's an important thing.
In when you are, it's like you start on the second level, right? Or in this case, the 5th level, or whatever, out of 10. You're already halfway better than most of these people that you're competing against. There's absolutely no reason to shit talk them. Like that's so punching down. And just because you're part of a crowd that's been historically taken advantage of or whatever, it doesn't give you the right to then flip the script.
That's what bothers me the most, is when you do look at actual cases of hate crimes and atrocities carried out against people for being transgender.
Yeah.
And then we've blurred it into, if you have an issue with a cage fight in which a biological woman has her skull cracked by a biological man, that you are somehow contributing to the same kind of hatred.
Yeah.
When they're worlds apart.
Yeah. No, it's like identifying as a 6-year-old and then fucking beating up a 6-year-old.
Well, that's what Gad saw it. If you know who he is, he's something of a conservative professor, but he makes some of the best satire footage you'll ever see. And that's what he's like. I will be entering a 12-year-old's judo competition based on my identification as a 12-year-old. I love that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I disagree with it, but at the same time, the women all continued to enter into the competition knowingly, right? So good for them. There should be an asterisk beside the name, just like it will be for the COVID Stanley Cup. Like there should be, check the rule book here, or check the record book. See page this or whatever, and be like, okay, so Sam or androgynous person A was
right.
They finished here, but all the people who trained their entire lives as a actual normal female competed to this level, right? Like I just feel so bad for the other people in the competition, right?
Well, and I think you can read that intention is not pure in doing this, especially because it never happens the other way around.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of reminds me of when I try out for hockey as a young guy, right? And there was always the players who were, a little bit more developed, a little bit more mature, and they'd go up and play in the higher divisions, like around whatever year, say midget or bantam or something like that. You'd have a guy who'd go play in the WHL and play against grown men, 20-something-year-old men, and then come back and they'd hold a spot for him on the AAA team because, well, if he doesn't make that team, he's definitely good enough to make, but he's way too good to be playing minor hockey. But he'd come back and he'd just run train on everybody. And it's like, well, he's taken the spot away from somebody who's, should be at this level. He should be playing way higher than this, but he's, for whatever reason, not. And, he made the choice to come back here and just run the train on everybody, and that's not fair, right? But I don't know. I also have a lot of white male privilege, so who knows who cares what I have to say?
Yeah, you feel it? You don't think you have like good parent privilege?
Well, yeah, I definitely have good parent privilege. Very, very lucky, but at the same time, you guys do what you want to do. If it affects me, I'll say something about it. But
I do think that the pinnacle, the best example you'll get of male privilege these days is that sports controversy.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
That if it exists anywhere, it's there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas presently, I do understand the argument for what male privilege, in which you see the majority of drug addicts are men, the majority of people in prison are men, and so on and so forth, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The majority of suicides are men.
People killed at work, men.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and
not to say that women weren't subject to a great deal of social standards revolving around social rigidity.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I do think that's a thing where gender rigidity is not something I encourage. No one should have to be a certain way in personality or demeanor because of their gender. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean anything in context of their behavior and personality.
Yeah. No, I think the biggest message that I can say is the world sucks for everybody. The world sucks for everybody. It sucks more for some people, obviously, but it's not like it's always gravy for, like, there's still white people in trailer parks, right? Like,
for sure. And that's all the white people I know who don't like the term white privilege had a shitty life growing up.
Absolutely.
And I do think sometimes people throw that word around in very different ways, though, because I know some people who are just use it in a way that they mean that your skin tone never made your life more difficult.
Right.
And then I know some people that use it in this weaponized way that it means white, easy life, no exception.
Right. Yeah. And that's the one I disagree with.
Yeah, but I like to really dive into what this person's personal definition is of it, because a lot of people use the same words and they mean very different things.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And, especially when you keep changing words and changing the dictionary and changing the meanings behind words, right?
Holy Christ, right? It's out of control right now, that one. Yeah. Whereas I do think the word conspiracy in and of itself is something now people think just means untrue and fake.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. It's, yeah.
What bothers me, because I find it offers too much room for hypocrisy in our culture, is moral relativism. And we see that my present example is what's going on in the Ukraine, right?
Right.
Whereas you see now Facebook all of a sudden is allowing support of Nazis as long as it's supporting them against Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so absurd. It's so morally relativistic, where it's not all of a sudden okay to support Nazis.
Yeah.
And that should be circular logic. And it's bizarre to me that it's the people who say that Nazis are around every corner in our culture when I have never seen one in my life.
Yeah.
Personally.
I've seen one.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm not saying they don't exist, but I'm saying they're definitely not everywhere that people say they are.
No,
and that crowd of people all of a sudden are advocating for supporting them against Russia.
Yeah.
And anybody who acknowledges that there is any Nazism occurring in the Ukraine is a Russian propagandist.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Yeah, well, any white guy who's proud of himself is a Nazi these days, right?
Exactly. That's what we define it as here. But over there, we go, well, what's the danger of funding extremists to stop Russia?
Yeah.
Which I can't believe that I guess people forgot what happened in Afghanistan in the 80s. It's bizarre, right? Hillary Clinton was even trying to bring that up in some, stomping her feet and showing off that, like, oh, if those pesky Russians try it with us again, we'll show them just like we did then. Yeah, when you funded a bunch of extremists and that because that didn't have ramifications down the road, it's absurd.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's so bad, as people even overlooking that Zelensky, president of the Ukraine, was on BBC and he specified how hard it was to see scared and frightened children with blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah, just crying out for that white American voter to send their boys off to war, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just no one wins a war. No one wins a war, and it's so bizarre that the people who I think would define themselves as counterculture presently are pro-war.
Yeah.
And I have lots of friends, even my own family is I have Ukrainian family members. So I try to acknowledge how they feel ethnically attached. They feel attached in nationality to the conflict. But I still do think we have to live in reality and say arming Nazis as a proxy military to fight Russia is not good. And it's not going to have no consequences, especially while radical Islam is extremely prevalent in Europe presently. Yeah. What's going to happen after you fund all these paramilitary white supremacists to fight Russia?
Yeah, who are they picking on next, right? Is, that's...
Well, and picking on who knows, right? I think that's more setting up a great, a schematic for civil war.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, European civil war. That would be, absolutely the worst thing. Unless because it doesn't take long before it spills over here, right? We're just a quick flight away from Russia.
Here, I think something else is going on. I more have some potential guests lined up who served in Yugoslavia. So I've been looking at the breakup of Yugoslavia quite a bit.
Okay.
And this Balkanization in which you can really see people's cultural stances break up a nation. No problem. And sometimes I think in North America, we're more likely to be subject to Balkanization.
Yeah.
In which we'll break into different countries because of this extreme difference in cultural values.
Yeah. Well, that is almost inevitable at this point, right? If it's not left and right, it's, black and white, it's gay and straight, it's fucking, indigenous, non-indigenous, no matter what, there's always an us and them. And that is just so beat to death by the media right now.
I think it's a sign of authoritarianism, though, when the us and them is one group of people and it starts to alienate a lot of other groups of people to bond together.
Yeah.
That's where Michael Malice has a book. I haven't read it, but I'm fascinated by it, and it's called The New Right.
Right.
And ultimately, the point is that there's all these different groups of people coming together who you never thought would have, and the only thing they have in common is that they're tired of the church of progressivism.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the enemy of my enemy, right? And
for real.
Yeah.
For real.
I totally see that coming. I don't really see any way out of that other than, individualized media and
they're trying to stomp that out in Canada, right? Is what I think the move with bills like C10 and C36. And I think they do want to stop the decentralization of narratives in this country.
Why do you think people are so resistant to and I don't want to say waking up to this because that's what kind of got us in this whole mess in the first place, being woke. But why do you think people are so resistant to believe that their government doesn't have their best interest at heart all the time?
Personally, I think there's this degree of human nature that's extremely stubborn. I think when people have been a part of a group of people and advocated for something long enough, no amount of evidence that it could be doing harm will change their mind.
Yeah.
Some people are subject to that ability to change their mind, but there are people who I think will, they will pave the way to hell with good intentions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also think that our culture has set it up very conveniently in a lot of ways with things like the emphasis on technology and social media and it fueling our neuroses and anxieties, as well as even just I think it's a major issue that we have bipartisanship in our politics, that there's only two viable options here in Canada and in the States, I think really contributes to this polarization and social stubbornness.
Oh, absolutely. It's the great divide, right? I don't know what I'm starting to have a new found respect for the Republic of the United States, right? How they broke away and decided we're just going to be, our own unit from now on, right? And how they managed to do that, because you read back and a lot of those guys are in their early 30s, maybe early 40s or whatever, and it's just a bunch of guys like you and I that got together and just had enough of paying the boss or whatever, paying the man, paying the King of England, and then they decided to put their foot down, right? And it just like to see how easily, I guess not how easily, to see how far apart the US and Canada are. It just like all because of the ties to the UK and the fact that we want it to be more socialist and we want it to be more free or more governed. And
personally, I do think that the British Empire still has a great influence, right? I think that when people get right off the term globalism really easily, I think they're being absurd, in which we have a great deal of nations across the world that are all constitutional democracies representatives of the monarchy still, right? Like when you sign up for the Canadian military, you're signing an allegiance to the Queen.
Right. Yeah.
I think they have a great deal of influence. And sometimes I really do think that the States isn't all that they've chalked themselves up to be.
Right. Well, they've definitely walked a lot of it back, or they've kind of been pulled to the left over the years, closer to what our politics are, since the Democratic Party or whatever was created, and especially since the Clinton age or whatever, where I think, those dirty little hooks got into the country, and I don't know who's pulling the strings behind the scenes there, but I don't know. I get down these rabbit holes, and the mind starts going, and I can't, like, it's so depressing to think like that it just feels like it's hopeless, right? Like
somewhat. Sometimes I try to not think like that, but I do think the lowest form of warfare is to pick up arms.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think about in context of the culture war, because there are some places that I do think you cannot force these people to do things, and they are potentially at risk of being subject to different types of authoritarianism, right? Like these people who are huge Trump advocates because they think that that's the exit from authoritarianism.
Yeah.
I like to point out that he went to the Philippines and met Duterte and, congratulated him on the great job he's doing.
Yeah.
Where that guy's, without a doubt, a fascistic dictator who kills people for smoking marijuana.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's shaking hands with, what's the chubby little North Korean?
Oh, yeah, Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
I thought most of that actually, the easing of tensions, I was impressed by during his presidency.
Yeah.
But then he turned around and then said that we're analyzing the Gaddafi model, which, like, he publicly said that, which I feel would just raise the tensions. Any tension soothing has been reversed by that statement, because what happened in Libya is not America's best achievement, which is what I think with the whole Ukraine thing, people have forgotten what the whole point of a movie like Team America World Police is, right? It's like, oh yeah, what country needs some freedom right now, right? It's absurd.
Yeah, absolutely. Just need somebody to blame the gas prices on, right? And it's just something that just keeps bothering me. The more I learn, the more powerless I feel somehow. Like usually with knowledge comes power, but you think, oh, well, here's an opportunity for myself to, just show support or whatever, to go out and wave a Canadian flag for the Freedom Convoy or whatever. And then all of a sudden, oh, well, you donated or you showed support. Okay, well, now you're on a watch list. And you're going to be on that watch list until the next big wave of something comes. And if you don't step in line, then you're on the double watch list. You're on the extra care watch list. And then pretty soon, who knows how far that goes, right? Like to think just to have individual thoughts now is almost becoming risky.
I do wonder if there's any other options sometimes. Last night when we went to the movies, I started to think about the very fact that we want more convenience at every opportunity because we're looking for things to be easier and more efficient.
Yeah.
I had to pay for a few things all really close together. And then you do think if they put, people would gladly encourage the digital ID being attached to your person, whether it's in a microchip. If it then, when you walked in the movies, got all your stuff, it came out of your account without any transaction.
Yeah. Well, it's just like Wall-E, right? We're going to all become so, such creatures of comfort that we're going to be floating around not realizing that our Earth is, crumbling before us or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree.
The technological convenience is what makes me think that technocracy and authoritarianism is very, very difficult to avoid.
Yeah.
In the direction that the species is going.
Yeah. Because we do have the ability to do something like this where we can speak out and put it online. But who knows how long this will last, and who knows if this will come back to bite us, right?
Well, that's where I think there's an obligation right now, because I do think of it that there's a war going on.
Yeah.
I think there is a war going on for your thoughts and your support. And you really, the best way to fight it is just having difficult conversations, asking questions you're told you shouldn't ask.
Yeah.
And contributing to a nuanced discussion.
Yeah. But do you find that you don't do that with certain people? Like, certain people are just so beyond,
Oh, man. I know some people, they'll describe someone who is had reasonable concerns about the vaccine. They just didn't want to get it right away. They were like, I'm going to wait a month. And then their family's describing them as drinking the Kool-Aid, as if they're not drinking from the other vat of Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And it's so absurd, right? This effort to misrepresent people's points, right? To even just generalize them as a person who's, confused by a litany of conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's like a person just wanted to wait and see what happened.
Yeah.
And is that so bad? And really now you see all kinds of weird, twisted things going on in context of the vaccine, where you had the Moderna CEO just ask why on earth they had a patent for the gene sequence of their vaccine since 2016.
Interesting.
Yeah. And he kind of laughed it off and said, well, we do create viruses to... to come up with remedies.
Isn't that gain of function?
Well, that's exactly what he described. Yeah, it was it was absurd, but it did just take place a couple days ago.
I absolutely despise how all these things can come up, from credible sources that, Fauci this or, whoever that, and the Pfizer CEO, the Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, whatever, it comes out that they're just fucking snaky little weasels, which everybody with a, two eyes and a fucking brain can see that these people are only after the bottom line, right? And it was like that before the pandemic. It'll be like that after the pandemic. They don't give a shit about health or wellness or anything like that. If they did, they wouldn't put out half the drugs and all the diseases would be solved by now. But because they're making profit and they've got all these patents that they're allowed to hold on to and make the world sick and have to come begging to them.
No, that is really what confuses me about people who are saying that socialism is the only way out of this, because I go, this government that protects the corporations and facilitates these monopolizations more than anyone is who's going to fix our problems if we give them more power.
Yeah. So it's like, I just think of everything in similes or whatever, but it's like somebody kicking out your, breaking your leg, charging you to use the crutches, and then, charging you to fix your leg, and then breaking your leg again, and then taxing you, like just every step of the way, just knocking you down and then saying, well, give me more power, I'll make it better for you, right? Like, just give me a little bit more time. Well, you're not going to fix what's broken using the same thinking that got you into the situation, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's very disheartening.
That's what with the trucker convoy, all that jazz, which if anyone's curious, I'll recommend to you. There's a podcast by a woman named Whitney Webb. It's incredible. I can't remember what it's called right now, but look her up, Whitney Webb. Okay. And she's just put out an incredible podcast on... It covers the Freedom Convoy, secret societies, the World Economic Forum. It's very interesting. She talks with a Canadian guy who goes into all these practices of Canadian politics that I was totally unaware of. But the thing with that was these people anyone I personally knew who was saying things like these people are trying to overthrow the government and abolish democracy. I don't believe that they believe that, first of all.
Yeah.
But they then would justify it with things like they hate the government, right? They said that they can't stand anything Canada is as a nation because of the history and the blood it's built upon.
Yeah.
But my solution to that is to advocate for new use of a war measure by the present government. I'm like, you're going to use the government's going to help you because of your hate for the government? You think that giving them more power is going to help dissolve the government?
Yeah. No.
I just go like, do you hear yourself talk? Yeah. You sound insane.
Yeah. There's no way that more government fixes this. More government's what got us into this.
I hate the nation, so I'm going to give them new authority over the people because I hate them.
Yeah. Logic, right?
I just feel like people don't hear what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, the more I walk around BC and like, different cities or whatever, I see these older people, like kind of older British heritage, kind of very stuffy, waspy type people, in New West or North Vancouver, West Van, all these different places where you get just such an air of arrogance, right? Or the better than. And I not everybody, obviously, but there's a, like, if you look through New West, his culture, my girlfriend has been, she's told me so much about this. She this was one of her areas of study anyway, was the colonialism of New Westminster and the fact that it is the way it is because white people don't want ethnic people moving into their neighborhoods. It's why you're not allowed to tear down the heritage homes. You have to keep, it's a certain amount of history, but it's also because they don't want people coming in and putting like East Indian houses up or, having, well, definitely not First Nations people move in next to them because apparently like New West is one of the worst places ever for atrocities against Indigenous people.
Really?
Yeah, like wow. they quarantined them on Queensboro Island and basically got them all sick and that. Yeah. Anyway, there's lots more that you can go into if you're really interested, but the little bit she's told me, it's just such a not like chauvinistic. It's such an arrogant way about people, and I get that sense from the news that these are the people that are just content with going along with their lives because, they've only got 30, 40 years left and they just want to ride it out, enjoy their white privilege and keep going for, the next 30 years without having to worry about, politics or anything like that. Meanwhile, those of us who are going to be around for the next 60 or 100 years are trying to keep these people from ruining our country, right?
Oh man, and then don't even get me started of the big trend of people who have the solution to all of society's problems, but they're anti-natalists. They don't believe people should be having children at all, right?
Yeah.
And then they write off concerns of people with family values.
Yeah.
And that's a big one with the should you give hormone replacement to children? Right, and so on and so forth. And the people who say, obviously you should, you ask them if they intend on having kids. Fuck no.
Yeah. No.
It's like, why on earth should I take your opinion seriously then for what you think is best for children?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It confuses the hell out of me.
And, I'm all for trans rights and being able to choose what you want to do.
For sure. But, consenting adult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of things that you can't do until your brain is fully formed at, say, 25 or later, and I realized that starting hormones after you've already become a full-fledged, gender or whatever is...
This is what I'm looking for.
Okay.
It's difficult, right? You might have a more difficult time with your feminization.
Yeah.
If you went through the full-fledged puberty. And that's where I do think I worry about putting anything in legislation, because I think the government has a great way of fucking everything up, no matter how good of an idea it sounds like. Yeah. So I don't even trust these people who want to make legislation to make it illegal to have hormone intervention for teenage gender dysphoric people. Right? Yeah. I don't necessarily think that's a solution by any means. But coming from a stance where I look at it through the lens of endocrinology, because it's a bit of a hobby of mine to look into it, it's I think even women taking birth control is trivialized to a crazy degree. Because it is hormone replacement that women use as contraceptive. And it has a great deal of effects on them that people just trivialize.
Yeah.
And I think it is something that should be talked about way more. Women should be more educated on what they're doing, the effects of it, because it has bad effects on them. And I think it's so ridiculous, because then something like testosterone replacement for men, right? These people say, like a young man wanting to do testosterone replacement because he's struggling with whatever issue, they'll look at that narcissistically, right?
Right.
But then if a young girl wants testosterone, they advocate for giving it to them, no questions asked. They think it's absurd if you want to talk about the rough ridges of the topic.
Right. Do you think that's why? Do you think that they're just too afraid of the backlash? Do you think that they have any second thoughts, but they're going to keep them to themselves because, well, I just don't want to rock this boat. Like, give her whatever she wants. I
think that's with the medical professionals. Presently, that's the case.
Yeah.
Because there are some guys like Derek of More Plates, More Dates has addressed that it is crazy that a 25-year-old man struggling with his testosterone will have a harder time getting testosterone than a young girl.
Yeah.
In a lot of places. And that's should be very concerning, right?
Yeah.
Because even it's not like it's without ramifications to take hormone replacement that matches your biological endocrine tendencies, right?
Yeah.
So it's to go and introduce something that's totally the opposite of, and then to say it's of no consequences, or we shouldn't even humor a discussion of it, is where I just feel like it's wildly ironic. Do you actually want to help people? Because there's tons of people who openly come out and say that they've done things they can never take back. And I feel like the amount of that crowd is accumulating.
Oh, absolutely.
All the time.
Yeah.
My girlfriend goes very deep into it.
Yeah.
On people's detransition stories.
Yeah. I've seen a little bit about that one. Oh. Excuse me. That one person. Oh, nicely rolled. Mm-hmm. Is that the... Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't roll this.
I was going to say, well, that was impressive. Did that all without looking. Can't remember what I was saying. What was I saying?
No worries. There was one person who I just had mentioned my girlfriend's interest in detransitioner cases.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that one person who's like talked about her transition back or whatever. I guess I think it was a guy.
Is it the older person?
I'm not sure. I think probably maybe 30s or something like that. Anyway, it was,
okay.
That person was this person was very insensitive towards it or whatever, and it was kind of more of an ad for why it shouldn't be a thing than being a thing. But it still to me gave validity to the fact that there are people who change their minds, right? Like, it is a phase. I'm not the person I used to be when I was 20, right? Or 18 or 17.
It needs way more case-to-case assessment. And there's a lot of people who did it in the past, and it used to be a very different process where you did have to meet with a variety of experts, and they all had to agree that they thought it was what's best for you.
Right.
And that is where some people like Jesse Singal is a journalist, and he contests some of Abigail Schreier's work on the subject because he goes, there are some cases where it really does seem like intervention for this gender dysphoric individual saved their life.
Right.
And that's what I do think. There are those cases, though, if you take a sledgehammer to the issue with legislation and say no intervention for anyone beyond, under this age, that I still think some people will be harmed from that.
Yeah.
And that's where they go, have a heart, have some compassion. It's like, what about people who, there's a lot of people who say that they are unhappy with the fact they can never have children and things like that.
Yeah. Well, excuse me. Well, like there was always these kids in class that, matured a little bit faster than the rest of us, right? Like there was a guy at 12 years old with a six-pack and a mustache. And
yeah, man, I looked like a girl until I was fucking 22.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. I had, I was such a late bloomer. I had to fucking fake orgasms masturbating, right? And so, like, but that person, say if you're that person at 12 years old with a mustache and a six-pack and you want to be a woman, right? Mm-hmm. Like, your body is already, the body of what somebody who is 18 is, right? Like, so really your body is at the level of an 18-year-old, but your mind is still a child. So where do we draw the line there? And how do we differentiate?
Well, the mind can change from particular endocrine affecting drugs, particularly those that are progestogenic, which some birth control is. And I think that's where it's a thing that shouldn't necessarily be trivialized so much, because it can have changing effects on your brain. But a lot of people who have influenced my opinions on things like hormone replacement and endocrinology say that it's less the age and it should more be the comprehension of what you're actually doing.
Okay, yeah, I respect that.
That it's not like there's an age where, like, wait till you're 21, because that really, for some people, makes way less of a difference. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
For the reasons that you just mentioned. That puberty hits everybody differently at different times. So it really doesn't, the age for when a young man should start experimenting with steroids, if that's an intention, there is never going to be an official one.
Yeah.
But you should really do the pertinent research to know what the hell you're actually doing, the risk, how to mitigate them, and how to, back your ass out of your fucking position if you make a mistake.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Like, I've made plenty myself as somebody who uses testosterone replacement.
Yeah.
I've taken drugs that had a horrible effect on me, and you should damn well know how you're going to get out of that position.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, comprehension, that makes a lot more sense. Instead of just having a generic age irrelevant age limit or whatever. Mm-hmm. But how would somebody go about testing the comprehension? Like, is that just a therapy?
Well, if you actually, I think, wanted to have an effective education around this subject, you would look at the science and biology to a degree, right? Rather than, I think it's flooded with myth presently. There's a lack of objectivity.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, I am 100% against anybody being persecuted for their personal choice, their appearance, their sexuality.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. If that person should never have to suffer anything along the lines of physical violence or anything like that. That's terrible. But I think it should be acknowledged that you can do harm by trivializing all the scientific factors around this.
Yeah.
And even just being reluctant to measure the social effects.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, sorry. It makes total sense to me, and I think just the fact that the subject is taboo to talk about.
Oh man, that's exactly it. I get concerned when anything's becoming a subject that you're not supposed to truly talk about.
Yeah. Like,
good conversation, I think, always comes with the risk of offending someone and having disagreements and having to work that out.
Yeah. I was at a kind of a corporate event for like not a union thing, but like it's something in the labor movement, and it was very PC, right? And
like, would you describe it as a safe space?
It was a safe space. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Did you feel like you couldn't talk about anything?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Like, and it wasn't for me. I was just a guest, obviously. And, so I get to come in, and it was almost like the feeling I got when I would go to church, as a kid. Like I just, not that I shouldn't be there, but like it's like there's somebody waiting to smack your hand with a ruler, or you know, and there's some they them theirs there, and which is great. They're all great people, and they're fun to party with, but you know, it's almost like the people who are uncomfortable in these social settings got together, changed their wristbands and said, like, let's make everybody uncomfortable. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
When it comes down to it, it's like, you know what? It sucks that we're not comfortable. So, like, let's make everybody else not have a good time. And that way it'll be better for us, right? Because then at least we're on the same playing field. And as much as I love your mother Russia, like, the comrades all being on the same level, I don't like that. I like the Jimi Hendrixes and the Flowers that come out and...
Well, it's funny because it makes me think of, I was saying to my girlfriend today that you kind of see this different take on sexuality than was formerly in the groupthink dynamics of something like the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you look at 1984, the old movie, they're all wearing like unisex gray jumpsuits, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's comrade.
Yeah.
And I feel like they did try to eliminate gender binary. They just went about it in a very different way where it was like there's one gender and that's comrade.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, yeah, it's kind of spooky how accurate Orwell's theories were, right? Like
with the like truckers, the demonization of the word freedom.
Yeah.
I was like, that guy's got to be laughing his fucking ass off from beyond.
Oh, absolutely. He's like he couldn't hit the nail more flush on the head. Like, and it's almost like there's somebody playing it out to that, because if there's a conductor of all this going on and he's sitting back and thinking, like, it's so on the nose, it's so meta that, like, if everybody is going to think that there's somebody pulling the strings, but then they're going to think, well, it's so obvious that nobody can be pulling the strings. And you know what? I'm playing the strings. Like, it just feels that it's just so orchestrated that all the wrong decisions are being made or all the right decisions are being made for the wrong reasons, right? And it's to think that there's not a cabal or a World Economic Foundation or whatever that is not pulling the strings is like, there's no way it can't be.
Oh, I know.
Right? Like,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, like...
and historically, there's so much evidence of it, right? But presently, people like to... That's what I think this rebranding of the word conspiracy is, because now people don't want to acknowledge things like the influence the Freemasons had.
Yeah.
Or, the Skull and Crossbones Society under Harvard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, how are we going to be able to trust history books for much longer? Like, are they going to start?
Have we been trusting them too much already?
Have we been? Right? Like, and everything we've been taught in school is very watered down. To take out the violence and the things that really did.
I felt like mine wasn't bad in terms of really being honest about colonialism and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I actually did feel like when I learned about the Aztecs, when we learned about Native Americans, it was emphasized that this was
not great,
not our finest moment as a society.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but at the same time, like that's very, I don't know if that has anything to do with critical race theory. I'm not sure if we're for or against critical race theory. Like,
well, okay, so when I think about what I used to perceive it as and people who were proponents of it, it was things like, the 16th Amendment. Was it the 13th Amendment? Anyways, they ended slavery.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then except for people in prison. And then you had the war on drugs start. And then that predominantly affected specific neighborhoods of a specific race of people, then you have the CIA caught doing things like pushing crack into low-income neighborhoods, right? Selling drugs in the country that has a war on drugs going on.
Yeah.
And it used to be something like you'd say, I think that's a great example of systemic racism, right?
Yeah.
But then at some point it became let's get rid of honor roll programs because they're racist.
Yeah.
Because meritocracy as a concept is racist. Like, it started to get to a funky place at some point.
Yeah.
And I think I've heard this specification in the last week that you shouldn't think of non-racism and anti-racism as the same thing.
Okay.
Because anti-racism has this re-emphasizing of the necessity to look at race before everything else.
Okay.
And to say, let it override merit.
Right.
As something our society functions on.
Race is most important, so don't be racist.
Yeah, I think it also, what I've heard described as a concern is that there's a lot of emphasis on there's only oppressors and oppressed in society.
Really?
Yeah, and that's a lot of belief systems I hear where I get concerned when people say that they think society is strictly made up of the oppressed and oppressors, because when you get the world you want, where are you?
Well, you're the oppressor, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly where I do think anything that echoes that sentiment is concerning, because that's the best option for your revolution.
Yeah. Well,
but that comes from, I think, Marxism traditionally.
Yeah.
But you even saw that schism made by Nietzsche somewhat, because he had a distinction in master morality and slave morality.
Okay.
And I was having this thought today that what's going on is that people in the position of mastery, true elite ruling influential people, their groups, I think presently there's this movement to guide everyone in to glorifying slave morality, right? Because he would say, just for some quick examples, that you have master morality, and this is how society had divided itself in his appearance to the time, right?
Right.
You had nobles, and nobles were people who said ambition, nobility, courage were virtues. Those were the kind of things they made virtue, merit, right? And then the other class was bound to make things like humility.
Right.
And sympathy, stuff like that. They're virtues.
Right.
Except for at some point, then they become antithesis of each other.
Yeah.
In which then the slave morals become particularly the exact opposite of the master morals.
Right.
And I do think this occurs, that our moral compasses do get guided beyond more than what we actually believe or can perceive in the world. And it is based upon our position.
Right.
And the story we tell ourselves in context of that position. But what I think is going on right now is the elite is selling the slave moralist their own moral structure.
Yeah. I could see that.
Where they've glorified it into something that they can use to go beyond it. But really, the actual ruling elites will be the same people.
Right. Of course. It always.
I think it's a divide and conquer tactic.
Yeah.
Which I perhaps sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I give a fuck.
When you, I would agree until you look at the last, decade, maybe decade and a half of competitive victimization. Like, everybody wants to be, everybody wants to be the victim of something so that they can be lifted up by society, and
Yeah, I do think it's not good when people's social position is being determined on victimhood.
Right.
Because there is this odd thing right now where victim and hero feel like they could be interchangeable words in moments when you do see someone make a statement of who they are and their identity, and and then they're categorized as oppressed automatically, but you never see this person more celebrated than you have in the past.
Yeah.
Like you see them all of a sudden praised by everyone, a larger group of peers than ever before.
Yeah.
But you hear about how oppressed they are strictly.
Yeah. It's like only giving out second place medals, or only medals to the, to the ones who didn't win the race, right? Like, then the winner of the race is forgotten as an afterthought because they were, they had all the advantage. They won. What more do they need? It's almost like making winning losing, right? When you turn one thing into another, I'm sure that is dripping in Orwell for me, right? Like where if you really win, if you go out and succeed, then you're just hurting your brothers and sisters. So
it's the famine thinking thing that everybody who has something, it came at the price of someone else not having, right? That all the money a rich person has was taken out of
somebody else's
public's pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which,
I think, though, the big problem is you feel like this is disparaging to the argument that people in society should have an obligation to help people who are helpless, right?
Yeah.
Like, there are some people that I do think I have no issue if my taxes go to actually help them in a way that I think makes sense.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you hear about these new things that are supposed to be solutions to social problems, and then they throw money at it and you get no results, and you really weren't for it in the first place.
Right.
Or it's something totally tangent to anything you believe in.
Well, yeah.
Whereas if I have no problem with the concept of taxes, I'm far from an anarchist, I'm far from a libertarian, but I really do think the public should put some pressure on where they want them to go. And then the social justice causes that get so absurd with their demands start to trivialize the concept of the state being utilized by the people to help those who truly need it.
Right.
Even if it's not just in the form, some people assume that means just giving a certain demographic money or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily the solution. We need actually... long-term solutions that will be a lot more work than handing out money.
Yeah.
And that's even where I get skeptical of people's fundamentalism towards communism presently, right? I think social issues with human beings go a bit beyond economics.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think just redistributing wealth is a really viable solution.
I think redistributing wealth is a great thing. I don't think redistributing money is, right? Like when you consider what really being wealthy is, then you want people to have that, because that goes more than just what is in their bank account, right? It's like where they're
I think you're talking about personal value.
Well, there's that as well. Yeah.
Like you're talking about their worth.
Yeah, but like redistributing the wealth is in, why does like a certain part of China own most of Vancouver, right? Like that type of wealth should be redistributed to, not given away. Right? I might be talking out of my ass here. I was thinking about something else when you were talking, but to me, like just throwing money at a problem never has solved anything in the history of the world, right? Like the problem I have was, excuse me, is the fact that I'm paying taxes, which then go to the government. The government then gives a bid to a company with, a very highly paid CEO and very highly paid people. They fuck around on the job. They don't do it. They still get the contract. They take the money. They pay off the politician that got them the contract. They get another contract. So the tax money doesn't go to help the people that these contracts are for.
It gets siphoned at every opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure. Well, and this is where I do think you do see the same exact point of Animal Farm or 1984 being played out before our eyes, right?
Yeah.
Use the lower class to help the middle class become the top class.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then just two classes.
That's what it's like. You're told if you vote the right way, so on and so forth, that these people are going to be the ones that redistribute services in a way that's going to cure society's ailments or wealth or whatever.
Yeah. It might all be for our benefit, though. Like, it might all be a good thing. It might be all the master plan of those in charge, because automation is coming. And pretty soon we're all going to be out of work anyway.
Well, this is where I think the government and the corporations are becoming the same thing. When you see this Tesla now, they're making it so there's a kill switch for all the cars.
Really?
The government has ordered Tesla to do that by a certain year. And for being able to turn the car off remotely from not in the car. Like, you won't be able to drive your car for some reason. The government wants the Teslas shut down. Or the corporation is influenced too.
So why can't we lobby against that? Like,
well, that's where I think we get caught up arguing about bathrooms and pronouns.
Yeah.
Instead of talking about all these chemicals in our food and our, you know, the effect of plastics and pollution on our fertility. Like the fact of a lot of manufacturing is having this devastating effect on humanity's fertility as a whole. Yeah. Instead of anybody activating for something to be done about that, because it will come at the price of corporations making big changes. Yeah. But instead of arguing about that, we just want to make sure that, you know, the Coca-Cola commercial has a, you know,
dead Russian in it.
A dead Russian in it presently, or you know, the right person of the right demographic to represent Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's...
I think that we're intentionally distracted from actually activating for the most important of changes.
But do you think this is orchestrated, or do you think this is just everybody out for themselves and this is what it's created? Do you think people are actually trying to drive
I think that there is...
a long-term goal?
I think there's plutocratic influence of humanity's natural tendencies.
Okay.
Right? I think we're herded.
Yeah.
We're herded, but I do think that in ways that we want to go naturally. That's where I have a hard time thinking that technocracy won't just inevitably occur.
Yeah.
Right? Just for the movie example of you go in with your passport and your phone and imagine it just all happened automatically and it came at the price of your privacy and you know, and freedom.
Well, you know, I've been thinking about that lately too, going into like these fucking restaurants and stuff where I'm like, oh fuck, yeah, sorry, I forgot. And then, you know, scrolling through my photos.
One moment, comrade.
Yeah, exactly. And then, there you go. And then, my fucking ID. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. It's just in this, you know, switchblade of a wallet I have. Okay. There you go. Yeah. And then I think like, why couldn't this be easier? And then, right. Okay. Yeah. Just scan my barcode. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. More or less.
Yeah.
More or less.
And it drives me the other way. Like, cause I'm, you know, very contrarian in my own hypocritical way, but like it drives me the other way. Like I'm like, you know what, fuck it, I'm not even gonna carry my phone anymore. What are they gonna do? Like keep me out of here? Okay, well I just won't go to restaurants anymore. And then all of a sudden, you know what, fuck you, I'm just gonna not go out of my house anymore. And then it's like, okay, well I guess they won.
And then they get what they wanted anyways.
I guess they won. All right, well, okay, you know, it's either I get a barcode on my neck or I never leave my house. Okay,
well, or you just that's why I make the point of I think the corporations are blending with the government, because there's a lot of social contracts we've put in place with corporations that I don't think we would with the government.
Yeah.
So when they start to utilize each other, all of a sudden your privacy agreements with Facebook, would you have made those with the government?
Absolutely not.
No, but when the government and Facebook work together enough and ultimately have a symbiotic relationship, you
basically
you're well on your fucking way.
Yeah. And it's just the battle of convenience. And, you know, I think you were the one who sent me the digital currency, you know, them playing around with that idea for the States.
Yeah, I'm reading The Great Reset by Klaus Schwab and friends.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to see what it actually says, but it's very interesting. There's some things you mark off, but it is a great deal about trying to implement social, environmental, and economic changes at the end of COVID.
Right.
A lot of which we do see
happening.
The groundwork laid for.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there for as many people as there are that are orchestrating this, I mean, you have to imagine there's got to be, you know, at least one person for every 10 that understands and sees what's going on, but are just too helpless to get the word out, right?
Yeah, or they don't think it affects them in the long run, or they think it's inevitable. Sometimes I hear that if you mention things like this, people go like, could it really be any other way though? And then I do think, imagine you had that mentality about civil rights concerns you had.
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. You know,
because I do think there's this great nefarious thing going on, like something the World Economic Forum advocates for is stakeholder capitalism. And it's this new form of capitalism where the government, the public, and the corporations are blended, and it's a more egalitarian because everybody has more of a say in it. And I just think, fuck, does this sound familiar?
Yeah.
I feel like this maybe was attempted before. Maybe. I don't know. Perhaps. It sounds really reminiscent of some part of history that went really well not that long ago.
It's like they got to be behind it, or they're just riding the wave for themselves. I don't know. There's just too many. Chaos theory doesn't work in this situation, right? Like, we can't have all these beautiful, accidents happen that have created this. This is manufactured. There are people that have been orchestrating this for 40, 50,
I think things
years.
come up that they don't anticipate.
Yeah.
And then they adjust.
Yeah.
Personally, I think when you read things like psychology and philosophy revolving around power or seduction or warfare, or you get into great, wise, ancient texts like the Tao Te Ching and stuff like that, I read these things and I think the people who truly influence the world, even just people who come off as dopey, friendly politicians, right?
Yeah.
I think there's no way that they aren't far more calculated and aware of these practices that have been going on for a very long time, very effectively.
Yeah.
And even when there's endless examples of not using X amount of tactics resulting in the downfall.
Right.
Particularly, I'd bring like a book I would use as an example, something like the 48 Laws of Power, where it's all examples of people's successes and failures, and they've built a template of laws around them, some of which have reversals to watch out for, but not all of them.
Right.
Same with, there's a book called The Art of Seduction, and I read it while Donald Trump was being elected, and the amount of people I heard all the time say, what an idiot, do you hear how dumb this guy is, so on and so forth, and I'm reading this book, and I'm just watching The Art of Seduction take place.
Yeah.
Because this guy is saying all the right things for a
reaction.
a really large group of people.
Yeah.
Right? And he's playing dumber than his mark, right? I think it's partially an act.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely it is.
But I watched all these political examples of seduction in the book be played out before my eyes with Donald Trump. And then he won. And I just thought it was so funny that people just act like it's an accident, right? Like he's a lucky fool. You know what I mean? And I'm like, no fucking way.
Yeah, the drunken monk, right?
Yeah, and then that's where I think this then occurs in layers in society, right?
Yeah.
Where there's people dividing and conquering, and then they're being divided and conquered, right?
Yeah.
When I think about things like you have the World Banks, financial interest groups, stuff like that, I think then they get the geopolitical climate to fight amongst itself, while the nations encourage the publics to fight amongst themselves.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt about that. But like, does it go up to a smoky bar room or a smoky gentleman's club where there's like, $1 million glasses of scotch?
Or there's
being
these
swirled?
things that look barely human, and they stand around a portal where they sacrifice babies and siphon their blood.
Absolutely, yeah. No,
like Dr. Strangelove, right? And there's like always a guy behind the phone.
Yeah,
it's always about that phone ringing, and everybody's scared of the guy who's behind the phone, and you're kind of following the chain of command.
Exactly. Like, I don't know who's doing it.
Oh yeah, I don't think you could ever actually know just how far it goes. But do you watch Marvel things at all?
Yeah.
There's that Loki television show.
Oh, I haven't seen that one
yet.
Oh,
fuck. I think it's the best thing they've ever done.
I've heard that,
and it is an analogy for everything we're talking about, except for you end up in this position of, even if there's some plutocratic dictator hiding in the shadows, it leaves the implication of, if you create a power vacuum, is that any better?
Yeah.
Which is where we have the small scale example would be like Libya and Gaddafi, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's go bring Libya some freedom and topple this dictatorship. And now you just have this terrible, tribal warfare going on in the region.
Yeah.
Now it's worse than it was under dictatorship.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that, I remember that being kind of the whole point of Thanos too. Like, now that he's gone, what else, right? And there's always something. And yeah, I don't think that we have the leadership and I think that comes part and parcel with this whole situation is the fact that we don't have a leader of the decent human beings, right? Like the closest we have is a Joe Rogan.
I think they're siphoned out. And yeah, people like Joe Rogan, I think, are unaccounted for in the dynamic. And that's why they're trying to clamp down on a few things right now. Decentralized currency.
Yeah.
As all this Ukraine stuff goes on, the U.S. has been talking about what kind of legislation they're going to introduce around crypto.
Yeah.
Right? And I think they really want to get that under control because it's a threat, as well as decentralized media. Presently, we have more people who can get more influence than ever before, saying things that go against the narrative or poking out the holes in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Imagine being alive in the 50s and the only thing you fucking got was the radio and the television.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if people were telling you other shit that they weren't saying, imagine how easy it was to write off those people.
Yeah. Fuck. We got to protect Joe Rogan at all costs.
Oh, I really think so. I think anybody who's saying things that go against the narrative and have a great deal of influence.
Yeah. Yeah. He's, I mean, I was all for The Rock too, but he, caved almost as fast as John Cena.
Well, you saw the example of that. Making censorship a virtue is something that really, it starts to eat its own crowd, holding it up, right? Because The Rock was defending Joe Rogan, and then he had been made clear that he had dropped some N-bombs, some with hard R's even, right? And then he's, gently said, I take it back.
Yeah.
And then next thing you see is people digging through The Rock's tweets, and it turns out he hasn't said the nicest thing about a specific, letter of the alphabet tribe.
Yeah. Yeah, or the Chinese, I believe, as well.
Oh, but he had some,
yeah. I mean, I don't think it matters if I repeat it, but it was this like something where he's like, do you something about who is that, or do you smell you smell what The Rock is cooking, and then as soon as they go to talk, he's just like ching chong bing bong. The Rock
I
is
did
fucking,
see, I did see that where it's just clearly it's an offensive impression of Chinese.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I did see that.
Yeah, so like nobody's perfect, and I think.
Oh yeah, that's exactly why to make censorship a virtue is just so self-defeating.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, and yeah, I think we need a leader who is still able to everybody has skeletons in their closet, right? And you need to embrace those head on, apologize for them if you need to, and if not, just fucking own them and just keep barreling forward.
That's it. People who own their garbage, right? And I think that's the fucking problem in politics, right?
Yeah.
Is everybody, as soon as there's something, even a family member with an issue, whether it's drugs, mental illness, all of a sudden you're written off. You did something bad when you were a teenager.
Yeah.
It's brought up. All of a sudden you're not even considered for still being in that position to represent the community.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you end up with a serious problem because nobody's perfect. And then the people you're putting in power who appear so are the people I think you could trust the least.
Yeah. Oh,
I think there's a
absolutely.
reason you see people who are gurus, represented as gurus, be something far more along the lines of cult leaders.
Yeah. Or
you know what I mean? Anybody, or rapist.
Yeah.
I do think you should be very skeptical of people who are unwilling to say that I've done bad things, I've made mistakes, I am flawed.
Yeah.
And then I see people just tear people apart.
Yeah.
Right? They really advocate for the censorship of whoever because they made a bad joke one time, or I'm trying to think. I had a better example in mind. But yeah, they just try to write people off. Oh, one I hear is a lot of people jump to that Jordan Peterson had his issue with benzos. And then it's like, oh, well, I guess he, who is he to give advice to anyone on anything ever?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think he's even more qualified now.
Well, that is, though, somebody who goes, I made a mistake. I'm super flawed. And it wasn't a minor mistake. And not only that, when you make it public.
Yeah.
I liked the Joe Rogan thing that with the compilation of him saying the word that you shall not say.
Yeah.
I think he's one of the only people in a position that he has enough influence that he was able to apologize and it didn't make it worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it does create this standard of not apologizing.
Yeah.
When we really do make people feel like they're twice as at risk if they address the thing that people are offended by.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know his buddy Brian Callen did the exact same thing. Like he came out with pushback and his career took a big, hit for a while, but he managed to come back because like he's not just going to come out and say, I'm sorry for this because somebody's accused him, right? It's innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around, right? And I think Rogan obviously being very much guilty of that, but pointing out the fact that almost every white person has said that word at some point or another, right? So when you point your finger, there's, three more pointing back at you. And, to point out that hypocrisy and be able to get away with it, obviously it comes with a lot of influence, but that is like the first brick back to, where we want to go, right?
I think so. And even I was watching his podcast with Freddie Gibbs and Brian Moses, I think how you say his name. But, and the very first thing, right, they're both black gentlemen, is they're talking about it. They're talking about it the first thing. And I just think it was, I like that he just addressed it head on rather than it be something that, goes unsaid or is an actual escalating controversy.
Yeah. Well,
I think setting the ground to be able to forgive people, for people to address their errors, and also to accept that social standards change over time.
Yeah.
Lots of those clips were a long time ago, and he also changed his opinion on how he felt about his use.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, it is respectable and I think is the right frame of mind to have, because I know when I listen to those episodes, because I listen to them live, and it's hard on the ears to hear that word. It has been for me for a long time. I was
surprised, but I always heard that I noticed in watching the show quotes. It was always quotes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like it would usually be that this is what that person said to me.
Yeah.
And then he'd just repeat it, nonchalantly, which I don't think, there's plenty of crowds where that would still occur.
Yeah. Oh,
in the real world. Like, absolutely. I think you'd be ignorant to say otherwise. So, it was just, it's still on its way out.
Yeah.
If that's really to be what is going to take place.
Yeah.
Which I do understand, right? Because I think people do attach a lot of pain to specific things and they can't think of it in any other context.
Yeah.
And there is a degree of just accepting that a lot of people are binded together by a painful piece of history. Yeah. That's where I do understand how collectivism does take place so rapidly.
Right.
Because there are people who really do feel like they understand the position that other people are coming from. And especially when so much of our history is one tribe stomping on another, or one nation stomping on another, one race stomping on another.
So soaked in blood.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to find, to glorify.
No empire's hands are clean.
Yeah, exactly. Glorify the one flower in the, the field of fucking blood and guts, right? You have to look at it as a whole. But yeah. No, I have high hopes for him. Like, hopefully I've been watching him waiting for the moment where, he folds like that. Like he did that, good apology, which, good apology. It's an apology for saying something. So it is what it is. But I think he handled that very well, handled it like the boss, kept moving, and he'll acknowledge it. He'll talk about it, but it's out and it's addressed. It's dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as, I don't think they're going to come back at him, or if they're going to try. I'm very interested to see what happens with CNN, because since they lost that Zucker guy or whatever, he stepped down. Apparently, the parent corporation is about to do some changes. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But
yeah, that's where I do think even part of these efforts to clamp down on the internet all revolve around the fact of trying to keep the legacy media alive a little longer.
Yeah.
More than anything.
Yeah.
Because they're losing trust from people more and more by the day.
Yeah.
Like, I talk to enough various people of various backgrounds.
Yeah.
And I know that there's so many people who trust legacy media, corporate media, less than ever.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm, aside from my father-in-law, I'm the only one who watches it that I know. And I only watch it because he's got it on, and I'm sitting there having breakfast, or I'm, eating lunch or having dinner, having a smoke, and it's on in the back, and I just like, Fox News or CNN, and it's so transparent with how, or I guess it's not transparent, it's so blatant with how fucking curated it is, right? Like, and it's trigger words with, like, it's like everybody's playing dress up. Like when you
it's inauthentic.
To do a sketch about, like, you can go out and do a comedy sketch about being a reporter just by, it's because it's just so fucking generic, and they just talking heads on a screen. It's awful. And
and sometimes they put 5 of them on at the same time and give them 3 minutes to talk, and they all squawk over each other trying to get the most attention in that 3 minutes.
Exactly. They spend 2.5 minutes just bitching about what the last guy said, and then nobody can, have a rebuttal. But yeah, no, I've lost all interest in it, and I don't know how somebody can watch that and get their news from that, other than the fact that something happened. You can't get an accurate.
Sometimes
picture
I
of what's
hear
going
people
on.
Describe, but they go like, well, what about NPR? And I'm like, you mean the hipster CNN?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, did you just try to, defend CNN and the legacy media with NPR? I'm like, I'm pretty sure someone sent me an article about the racism of hiking.
Yeah.
Last year from NPR. Christ. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Black people hate the woods. And hills. Hills and woods. Yeah.
I just was like, fuck. Well, I sent it to my friend who is black and was like, I'm pretty sure we've performed acts of racism together, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because we had been hiking.
Yeah.
Somewhat recently, even.
Wow.
He was like, oh, no.
Well, I guess there's black Nazis now, too.
I saw a video of a black Nazi last month. It was super funny. This guy drives a cab, who the fuck knows where, I can't remember. Yeah. But he's in the fucking cab. He gets caught with an armband with a swastika on it. Someone's taking pictures of him. It's happened on multiple occasions. People have called the company. They're like, hey, man, there's this fucking guy driving around with a swastika on, that I'm getting a ride from right now, and I don't fucking want this. Black guy.
Yeah.
It's hilarious, though, because then the news finds him, they're asking him about it, and he goes like, I don't see what the big deal is. They're a socialist nationalist party. I'm a nationalist socialist. It's a good idea. And then the reporter goes, you realize that 6 million people died in the Holocaust? And they give him the mic, and he goes, I have no statement on that presently. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, good for him, standing up for what he doesn't know about.
I don't know. I just thought it was fucking so good.
That's hilarious.
Because he spoke with such conviction. He was just like, I don't.
Yeah, it's like, well,
He's like, I don't see why more people aren't.
Yeah, I'm ashamed you even ask.
Yeah, it's fucking good, man.
I look really good in white. Yeah. No.
Yeah, but you see more things functioning on blockchain, right? Like this Odyssey, and it's like the YouTube functioning on blockchain. And sometimes I do think that they are going to install the technocratic society, but we're going to have something along the lines of cyberpunk. There's going to be the anarchistic alternative, and you live a very different life if you decide that you are not going to be a part of that society. Because Westworld, the 3rd season, also depicted it quite well, where you do have this very digitized dystopian world that everyone's living in, iRobot-esque, but criminals still have a network they function on, and really you just get jobs to commit crimes for syndicates on your fucking phone, on an app.
Yeah.
And then I wonder, is that going to be the alternative, right?
Yeah.
If you say you don't want to partake in the digital currency, now you buy the things you want from specific places with, your techno-anarchistic crypto.
You're going to need a license to buy microchips now. Like, that's the next stage. Well, anybody with, multiple computers is probably running
I think if it really happens, the whole thing is a A law of power is to preach change but not do it too quickly. So if these things are moved about slow enough, I do think, they will come just because not enough people notice what's happening fast enough.
Short memories.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if they do it too fast, I do think that you would see something like a balkanization and places that, would sooner put legislation stopping something like a digital currency than allowing it or permitting it.
Yeah.
But those places might also just encourage something else ridiculously authoritarian, like more Handmaid's Tale, right?
Oh,
and it's like the theocratic state of America became once again some sort of kingdom.
Yeah.
And they,
went back
had
to
armed militias, paramilitaries, and they ended up gaining a dominant force over the country, right?
Yeah.
Or at least X amount of the area, which is an interesting thing. But sometimes I do think that's what you could see happen, a balkanization. But I think it almost will be the technocracy and then the red states.
Yeah.
The places where people have too many guns and they want no part of that shit. And they probably like paper money. You know what I mean? It's like people with an old school way of thinking. I think sometimes those places are going to become the death grounds for, the former way of living.
Have you ever seen the movie Surrogate? Or was it Surrogate? Or it was with Bruce Willis anyway. I'm pretty sure it was Surrogate, where he basically plays a younger version of himself, and he
Looper?
No, he
okay.
That, I guess that would be probably a more apt description for Looper, but no, he plays like a better looking version of himself as the android that he plays.
I do know. I had a roommate once that was watching it, and I walked by. And everybody lives in these pods, right? And they have their better looking, younger, robotic version out there walking around. Yeah,
absolutely. And then there's these still,
and he's a traditionalist. He's a reactionary of some kind, wanting no part of it.
Yeah. Well, he I guess, he witnesses a crime or he's a cop, and he all of a sudden gets out of it, and then he's walking around all naked people, just in regular skin. And then I think there's like Malcolm Jamal Warner or something is in that, and he's like the leader of the human colony, where people who don't use surrogates are all off in these like little shanty towns.
Shit. Exactly.
See, that's what
I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Whereas iRobot's like there's one guy.
Yeah.
Right? And this guy's just like, get the fuck out of my face, you fucking robots.
Yeah.
He's like, I hate all of you.
Yeah.
He wants no part of this future.
Yeah.
But you notice I just watched that movie recently because I was thinking about it. And then he's scanning his phone for digital currency to be transferred to the bar, right? I just thought it was... iRobot's an interesting movie. And I do wonder if Apple is one day going to have an iRobot.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah, I remember watching that movie when it came out. I think I watched it.
I saw it in
times.
theaters.
Yeah,
I was a kid.
It was so good.
Yeah.
That's formed my opinion. A lot of my opinions on robots, right? Because of that.
Really?
Just because that made so much sense to me that
I'm skeptical even of the autonomous vehicles.
Yeah. Oh, that's.
I also
so
do
hard.
think, how on earth won't a relationship between the state and the corporation form, whereas things like limiting crime, like it would just, I think it's a no-brainer that if you have autonomous cars, you're going to watch where people go and pay attention to what they do on a far larger scale than you do presently.
Yeah. Well, the fact that, I don't think owning cars is going to be a thing of the future. Like, I think it'll all be just rideshare, right? Or
really,
cars will have places where you can take it wherever you need to go. It's like an Uber, but without a driver. And once the technology gets to that, but then they'll just be literally, millions of these cars, electric vehicles or whatever, running around, picking up people and driving to wherever they need to go. And owning a vehicle is going to be irrelevant, and it's, redundant or whatever. Like, you don't need to own a car, and then they can see where everybody goes. They see where you've been. They can take you there at a safe speed limit, or like at whatever speed they determine to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have total control over everything, right? And if you fuck up, or if you're a criminal or whatever, like there's literally nothing you can do already without a vaccination. There's so so many things that you can't do, right? Like you can pick up food and that's it. You can basically be at home. If you're lucky, you got a job. And other than that, you can pick up your groceries and eat by yourself. Like go ahead and eat with, your fucking cat, you lifeless loser, because you didn't share our views on vaccination, right? And what's the next?
Well, I
view,
think they're
right?
even eliminating that as being a discussion, right? I think it was way too glossed over and happened way too quick without enough discussion, and it's a rebuilding of the social contract, right? But it was done with corporate interest, and they did it under, the name of an emergency. I think it was just a very gentle example, and we will see the checkpoint society further encouraged.
Yeah, you always test the enemy's defenses, right? Like, you do a little bit of recon, you push the boundaries, you see what their response time is.
Yeah, are you implying that you think COVID is a social experiment at this point? Because I've said that a lot of times.
Yeah,
that at this point it truly does feel like a social experiment.
Yeah.
Like, I think they really wanted to just see how much people would resist.
Right. Yeah. I think it is part of a massive shell game. Like, I've heard all the conspiracies about Bill Gates and his, the decade of the vaccine and his talk from, 2008 with the World Health Organization or whatever, bullshit that he runs. He's like, yeah, well, they're basically handing out coronavirus merchandise in 2018. And, all this stuff is overlooked because, well, it's dismissed as conspiracy theory. Like, Bill Gates is a good guy. He just, sucked Jeffrey Epstein off a couple times and everything's all good.
You see his wife just openly came out and said that a big reason they got divorced was how close he was with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Like the amount of meetings they had, and she had told him that she was very uncomfortable with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, you got to take that with a grain of salt too, because there's nothing.
Oh, it could be just a virtue signal, right? Or
and hell hath no fury.
The new rights version of it.
Yeah. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, right? So, like, they're going through a divorce with a very highly publicized, lives or whatever. Who knows what she can throw at him? And, like, I'm not saying that Melinda isn't justified in what she's saying, because Epstein was a scumbag. But at the same time, like, you get into the... It's obviously very different for Bill Gates, but I think of it in this way. If I got into the car with the owner of my company and the owner of a company I work for or whatever, and I'm doing my very best to be on a good behavior because this is my job. Like, I really need to impress this guy, and then I eventually get to impressing him. I get to work with him for a while, and then 10 years later, it comes out that he was like a murderer or a rapist or whatever. It's like, okay, well,
I just think the likelihood that he had no idea as well.
Yeah.
That's where I think lots of these people must have known what his island was for a long time. Yeah. Whether or not they talked about it ever amongst each other.
Yeah.
Debatable, but enough people must have been aware.
Yeah.
And aware of who was aware.
Right. But I
got to hold you just because I got to piss.
Okay.
And I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah.
So what were you saying about the benevolent Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm just saying that, not to give any credit to Bill Gates, but...
Or his wife, you mean?
Or his wife. Either way, I
heard she's a skank anyways.
Yeah, she could be, Yeah, with a name like Melinda.
Mm.
Yeah. But, no, I just think that for, like... I don't know. Like, I don't want to make any bones about it, but... If the guy's got a bigger dick than you, he gets to fuck you. And if he fucks you good, you want to keep him fucking you. Because that's, like you want to keep that guy around, right? If he can do something for you.
Are you talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I tried to do it in the most homosexual way possible.
Okay.
But for Bill Gates, like he wanted that Nobel Peace Prize or something so bad that he was willing to do anything for it. And
this is your COVID theory. Or this is your Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates relationship theory?
Relationship theory.
Okay.
COVID theory? I don't know, maybe. But no, I just think like for him to want this Nobel Peace Prize so bad, and then for Epstein to, be killed over something else, or commit suicide, if you're a sheep, then it seems strange to me that, like, or it's not strange to me that he would fucking keep meeting with him. Like, if Bill Gates, who created Microsoft, like, he created a fucking company that is one of the biggest companies in all the world. It's still, like, it's a shit fucking service sometimes, but I still have it, right? Like, it's not the top priority, but it's on every computer, and you need it for most businesses. I digress. This guy created this fucking huge company. He's going to have a killer instinct. And if killer instinct means you got to rub shoulders with some nefarious people, a lot of people will, bend the knee to that person to get what they need, only to turn around him and shank him later or whatever. But he didn't get the opportunity, I guess. And who knows, Bill maybe went a separate way, and he ended up releasing this virus on his own and is now taking over the world in the power vacuum that Jeffrey Epstein created.
Some things are so fucking weird surrounding it. Like, if we're to be real about his response when he was asked about his involvement with Epstein, and he said, well, he's dead now, I believe is what he said.
Yeah.
And just kind of left that hanging out there.
Well,
as if that, why does any of it matter?
Well, that's pretty much how his fucking death was treated. It's like, well, he's dead now. What does it matter what happened? Like, this Ghislaine...
What's your theory? I think about a CIA honeypot is what I lean into, that I think it was to accumulate blackmail on people, to have them look out for specific interest of Central Intelligence or something like that.
I think it was very much that, among other things. I think just a dealer in favors, right? Like, he pulled the wool over this Victoria's Secret guy or whatever. Like, he obviously took him for all he was worth. And once he's a brilliant guy in manipulating people, is my guess. And he's smart enough to, pull the wool over people's eyes, and to be able to mingle in these social settings. So he obviously is like the world's best con man, or one of them. And I think that he
was a plant.
He could have been, but
or maybe he didn't get there, all on his own.
Well, yeah, very well could have been as well. I wouldn't disagree with that.
It's hard to write off any possibility, though, when you find out things like Charles Manson worked for the CIA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nothing surprises me when it comes to the CIA, but I just think that this guy was a fixer and a getter for everybody who had money. Like, he was involved in hedge funds, so he, like, could manipulate markets. He had, like, more money than I'm sure we even know about, and access to people and blackmail on people from coast to coast and, worldwide, right? So I think he was part of a conglomerate. And
that's where I think no way all of that was at him as an individual.
No, not like he created
I think he's working for a bigger entity.
Yeah. I mean, everybody answers to somebody, right? And the fact that he went to jail, I think, is like evidence that he wasn't the top of this, because the head never goes to jail, right? Like, the head is always somewhere hiding in the shadows. And, even the mafia bosses, like, one person goes to jail, somebody else pops up, right? And I think he was just a high profile fixer for a lot of people, and he contained a lot of secrets that a lot of people in powerful positions didn't want to get out. And, anybody could have murdered him, whether it was the Clintons or Bill Gates or, like, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he could have committed suicide too, to be completely honest, but it doesn't.
I've heard that his bruises don't align.
Yeah, the hanging breaks.
With the hanging, yeah, that it looks very different than when people typically hang themselves.
Yeah, or it's strangulation breaks rather than. Yeah, I don't know. That's all for another day.
This is funny. It's become a big conspiracy conversation more than anything. Culture and conspiracy.
Yeah.
But When are you going to get your own podcast going?
Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Once
And how do you ever have concern about, say, things that you might say freely of your own accord, reflecting upon your comedic endeavors?
Reflecting on the comedian endeavors, or from the comedian endeavors, like, because
Reflecting on them, like, say, your opinions about controversial subject, or even what you see in the world, if you think that would influence people's perception of you as a comedian.
I think I'm so inexperienced with it that I'd have to learn the hard way, right? And because I am only coming from the land of intentions, right? And I have pretty good intentions when it comes to making people laugh. Like, I don't want to say any of the R words or, the N word or anything like that. So I want to take people's experience into account, but at the same time, I'm not opposed to speaking my mind. I will be the first to tell you that I'm not educated on 99% of the subjects that I talk about. But nobody really wants to hear me talk about hockey, golf, or the Beatles, or jerking off. So, like, there's only a few things that I'm a real master at, and I'll touch on those subjects in a podcast for sure. But I have to spend most of my time out in the great wide open of unknown, and I just follow my sentences wherever they go to, right? A lot of the time. But I think for the podcast, I'd like to start one just to be able to express myself and show my personality, because a lot of the jokes are one-liners or short stories that don't paint me in the best light, or other people in the best light, or my life in the best light, but it's all for the purposes of making somebody laugh, right? So I'd like to be able to throw a podcast up and do it weekly, where people get to experience a little bit more of me, and me on my own terms, right? And as opposed to, like, doing other people's projects for them or whatever, and even doing some comedy shows, because some audiences, you got to read the room, right? And I can't do all the things that I'd want to do. I'm going to take into consideration who I'm playing for, right? So yeah, I don't know. To answer your question in a 3,500 word essay, yeah, I will be starting a podcast soon.
Cool. Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd even be just a good opportunity to riff.
Yeah.
And hash out material.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of comedians, one-person podcasts, like Tim Dillon's or Bill Burr's.
Yeah.
And Bill Burr just starts ranting.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'm really good at that, and I have recorded a few trial run shows just to get things going, and the problem is, like, to really open up, I feel like the in-laws have to be out of the house, because to make a good quality show, you can't have them fucking walking in the room every few minutes, and I can't really say things because I know they'll be sitting in their room listening or whatever, and what if I want to talk about them, right? So
for sure. Yeah, you get self-conscious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a serious thing when it influences your speaking or your even just any art you're performing. So you want to record yourself playing guitar. There's someone else in the room, I don't think you'll be as comfortable.
No.
And you won't have as good of a performance because of it.
Yeah, there's more risk. Yeah. But yeah, no, doing something like this is nice because I get to talk in a setting where it's actually a conversation. It's not like most conversations that you have on the day-to-day where, people are ready to jump from the next subject or cut you off and don't really have any interest in listening to you. And this, I feel like, is always a good back and forth and very cathartic for us to just bullshit about things that we think are important, and me talk about things that I think are true, and maybe I just made them up in my head. And it's a good exercise in human communication, not just comedy.
Yeah, for sure. I think it makes you really think more about your social interactions.
Yeah.
I think it influences me to have better conversation out in the world since I've started recording myself speaking.
Yeah. I'm definitely more thoughtful when it comes
to... exactly.
Yeah. But my conversations don't get any better because it's still the same people that I'm talking to who are, it's hard to have a conversation with somebody for more than 15 minutes. outside, right? And if you do, it's a big part of my day, or it's a big part of that person's day, because everybody's just on their phone, or they're distracted by something, watching TV, reading something. But when you actually sit down and do a podcast with somebody, you just mentally tune into somebody. It's a really kind of refreshing, for those of you watching, really refreshing conversation to have. And even if it's not the most entertaining to listen to, which I can't imagine anybody listening to me is, but working on that. But yeah, I definitely appreciate the podcast.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. And I look forward to you having one. And I do just think it's a great idea. It's also just the way to go about, I think, pursuing an art, at least right now. Like, if you're intending on doing comedy, I think it'd be silly to not do a podcast.
Oh yeah, it's marketing, if nothing else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And advertising, and it's part of the brand, and it's all in the works. I mean, I want to have something to I want to have something that I can direct people to, right? Like, I want to have a purpose for the show that I'm doing. I don't want to just say like, oh, I'm an open mic comedian. Well, it depends. Like, if I'm doing the show for the sake of doing the show, or I'm making a YouTube channel, which I've also thought about, then, it's going to be its own thing with ties to what else, the other things I'm doing. But I really want to pursue stand-up comedy, and I want to establish myself with that before I'm, telling people on the internet to come watch me do stand-up in the, back of a bookstore or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, they will go hand in hand at one point. It'll just be like kind of the natural progression of things.
Yeah, yeah. It'll also probably take its own form as you go along.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It'll grow. I've already had a few ideas that I've kind of invested in so far, and I just got to get them down.
Word. Yeah. How long do you think it took you to come up with this 10 minutes of new material?
20 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. This is
it's stuff that you've had for a long time.
Yeah. There's a lot of it is. But to be honest, it's always changing, right? Like, the ideas I've had for a long time. And the one thing about writing comedy, which, I'm not an expert at, but I've already seen the progression in my writing, like, to go from just writing out a funny story that I thought was funny and trying to make it funny, to now being able to structure it in a way that, is pleasing to read. And for me, the problem is saying it out loud, right? So I have all these funny concepts, but saying it out loud and bringing you in is something that I kind of obsess over, and get paralysis by analysis. But the writing process has happened, for the last 10 years, notes in the phone, and over maybe the last year, it's been kind of crafting them into jokes, and then only in the last probably 2 months have I done actual sets where I've written them all out, or just a couple key phrases from them all in number forms, and then I remember the jokes and I say them for people, or
really had it become material.
Yeah So that's really been the last couple months, and things have grown in that last couple months. Once you put it into a routine, you can mix and match things, and you can lead one joke into another, and if you get good at it to the point where you know the jokes, then comes the point where you're able to riff on it. And I was doing that at the class the other day, and came up with a few new taglines or whatever. And so it is fun. And I did hear about a couple open mics that I'll be attending soon. And
sweet, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't know anything about them yet. Like, I haven't gone to see them. They're usually on the night that I'm in the class, but I'm gonna do a little bit more research into that, and hopefully get up on stage here.
Cool.
But yeah, I have one show so far that the class is doing. It's like a dance recital. So,
Right.
Yeah, but that's yeah, my adult dance recital. But other than that, yeah, it's that's about it for the comedy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, let's wrap it up there.
Sounds good.
Right on. Thanks for coming, Trevor.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.